All right, thank you very much. Welcome, and thank you very much for joining us for this much awaited conversation with Mr. Edmond Sebetseba, who is already joined with us on both the platforms. And I see that there are a couple of you that are already on standby waiting for the conversation. It's really much awaited conversation, and I'm so excited to be hosting Mr. Sebetseba, who has a very wide experience within the topic that we're going to be discussing today. But we are going to be focusing the conversation on his story and building up the conversation around 4IR, because he has really dabbled in multiple of very interesting aspects of the 4IR, which he will be unpacking for us. I know that 4IR is a buzzword, but I think he will simplify it and we will get to learn more about his story as well, how he has transitioned within the ICT sector and to be where he is today now that he's an entrepreneur. But he will give us much more clarity and details around how his journey has been like. So I'm so excited to be joined by Mr. Sebetseba. Thank you so much for everyone who's joining us from various parts of the world. So we have people joining us from even outside South Africa. So we are very excited to be having you. So thank you very much, Mr. Sebetseba. I'm not going to waste much more time, but this is really a much anticipated conversation because a lot of people are tuning in right now to catch this conversation live. So Mr. Sebetseba, just as we start this conversation, please just tell us more about your journey. I know that you have worked very long time within corporates. Just tell us more about how has your journey been like in the corporate world, especially within the ICT field, within innovation, within the 4IR space, because that's mainly what has characterized your journey for, I don't know, the past 17, 18 years that you have been in corporate. So yeah, just tell us more about who is Edmond Sebetseba and how has your career within corporate been like?
Okay. All right. No, thank you, Mr. Mutsumi. So my name is Edmond Sebetseba, as you know. I'm a CEO of Alpha Innovate, which is a cloud computing company where we actually do cloud computing, which is one of the main 4IR elements. But we do a bit more than that. A bit of history about myself. I've studied in Pretoria Tech and graduated in 2003. And ever since then, I've been in corporate until very recent, where I've decided I think I have done my dues in corporate and I need to cut the cord. So my journey basically starts back in varsity, where the first business I've actually built was in 2001 with a few friends of mine in varsity, where the idea that we had was to actually never really work for anyone. And there's a reason why we actually decided that. It wasn't just that we actually wanted to be bosses or any of that, but it was more around the ideas that we had. We realized that there was so much that we actually could build and do that does not really exist anywhere else. It's actually fun when you look at some of these things, because you look at WhatsApp and go like, you know what, I actually thought about that, but so it's 100 other people, and those were some of the things that actually drove us. So after that first business that we actually built within varsity, we were still student at that point in time. 2 years later, it actually failed. Just like any business, you actually learn through trials and errors. So what happened is that after that first failure, it actually devastated all of us, where we all went into corporate. I remember the day where we had to close shop and we decided that, you know what, we are going to go work. And then for me, that's when I actually started getting into corporate. This was 2004, where I've worked for a company called Test and Data Services that was based in Midrand. And then from there on, I moved around. From Test and Data Services, I went to work for the government. I remember I joined Department of Water Affairs and Forestry, and I worked there for a week and I couldn't take it. It was I realized very early that it was going to be my career killer. So within a week, I actually resigned. This was literally my second job. From there on, I actually moved into the financial space. Now, financial space being the banking, I went and worked for FNB, where I was in FNB for about 2 years, and out of FNB, I moved into Hyphen Technologies, which is a company that deals with your NATO transaction, your debit orders and things like that in the payment space. From Hyphen, I moved into Celsi, where I've worked in the telecom space for a good year, and then from there on moved into MultiChoice. From MultiChoice, I was in MultiChoice for about 3 years as well. The idea that I had anyway within my moves was to gain as much experience. And within those times, I was actually starting businesses, funny enough. After I've left MultiChoice, I went to FNB, where I've worked in the cell phone banking space. Cell phone banking space, learned a lot in that space as well. And within that space as well, there was a lot of innovation that was happening in those spaces. I remember when the first mobile banking application that's on your phone right now came out. I actually wrote some of the few first lines in those in that application. I remember I had some of my lines in there as well. And then I moved to a company called ThoughtWorks, which is a US-based company. Now, within US, in that company, I went to I consulted in multiple companies, including Standard Bank, NetBank, and then I also got an opportunity to go work overseas, where I worked in China, I worked in the US, and Singapore, and a couple of other places. I gathered a lot of experience in those places. And then eventually after I've left ThoughtWorks, I was one of the few founders that actually started a consulting company called KMC, where I was in there for about a year, right? Got a little bit of a taste of really being away from a corporate space and almost really feel like, you know what, I can create my own, my own dream, basically. After that, within a year, it didn't really feel right, I guess. Not feeling right as in, it wasn't really exactly what I wanted to build personally. It was a group of us who built it, and everybody had their own vision, which was okay, looking at how we've built it. I've decided, you know what, maybe I need to go back into corporate, and there's reasons for that. I'll explain those reasons later on. And then I stayed at APSA for about 3 years. Within that 3 years, I reconnected with one of my colleagues that I worked with at MultiChoice. And then I think at that point in time, the penny dropped, and I realized that it's time to actually leave corporate, and that's when I decided, you know what, this is time to actually start my own business. And within that time, we actually launched Alpha Innovate. 6 months into Alpha Innovate, we decided, you know what, maybe it's actually time to completely leave corporate. So the first 6 months, we're actually working we're still within the corporate space, within APSA. And after 6 months, we decided now it's time to take the risk and actually go and, and experience the world directly. So 2 years later, 2.5 years later, we're here. We're actually about to turn 3 in the next few months.
Oh, wow. I feel like I just clap hands for you, just to congratulate you for this vast experience you have, and a very interesting journey, and the transition that has been very, very interesting. So while there, just tell us more about how has the transition been like? And I'm saying this because I have worked in projects where within the upskilling and the enterprise development space, where we have worked within the financial sector. So our clients were banks. So we were skilling them into entrepreneurship because they were affected by the retrenchment. So, but out of all the groupings that we have worked with, So we were with Group IT, one of the major banks, and of all the type of people that ever worked with, they were much more of the innovative and proactive people because they had IT skills, the skill in the innovation. So they started the IT and ICT related companies. And it was very easy for them to have a skill that is transferable into something that they could really start on their own. So from you, I just want you to tell us, how has the transition been like, and what are some of the lessons that you have learned that are helping you to be a solid business that you are right now from corporate? Because there's always an argument about whether it's better for entrepreneurs who started in corporate and started their business because they come with that background of knowledge and skills, rather than just starting like us. I started straight from varsity, never been to corporate.
Yeah.
So what has been the lessons and the shortcomings that you had in your transition while coming from corporate into entrepreneurship? Were you not scared? I mean, so many people are stuck in corporate, they're trying to move to the other side, and then they've got bills to pay, they don't know what to do, they don't want to take risks. So what can you tell some of the people that are on the line about how has your transition been like, and what inspired you against all odds to still pursue entrepreneurship?
All right. So I think I've had the entrepreneurship bug for quite some time now, actually as long as I could remember. So the transition was scary. I have to be honest. It was scary. Scary from multiple perspectives. The one is the fact that we do know that startups actually do fail. Or some people actually go into the industries, start their own business, and then they fail. And you're actually coming from a cushy job that actually has a security where you know that your salary is coming month end, whether you perform very well or you actually you don't do so well, you know that you actually have your salary there. And if you go into business, you don't work, you don't eat. That's basically what it comes down to. So that was very scary. So there's two positions that I actually hold in terms of starting from corporate and then going into your own space. And then the other direction is also starting from not going to corporate directly. So the advantage of going into corporate first is the fact that you actually learn certain business skills. So I think in terms of managing people, so for me, my view is that it doesn't come natural to everyone, and especially if you're in IT, a lot of people will actually agree on the fact that when you're actually dealing with tech, you don't really want to deal with people if you're a very heavy tech person, right? So corporate sort of allows you to actually, depending on the positions that you get to hold, is to actually work and structure people, work with people and really understand different aspects of working with people, working in a structure that's already there. You can actually also learn, depending on different companies that you actually go to, take the good out of what you have learned, whether you actually are building a product or servicing customers. You get an opportunity to actually see things from a corporate going into a customer's perspective. And then that way you actually are part of that value chain. That's some of the advantages that I see. The disadvantage is the fact that that safety net becomes a bit of a problem as well, because there is that sense of security. There's the sense of, I know that I'm secure until I retire at the age of 60 or 65. There's that sense of, I know that nothing wrong will happen. From the perspective of, I know that if there's bonuses, I'm most probably covered. But then there's also the oversight of the fact that if retrenchment comes in, you literally have never thought of any other ways to actually secure yourself. Now, what are the advantages of starting on the other side without joining corporate first? The advantage that I've seen was the fact that you are able to take risk. You become more of your risk appetite is a bit more easier because you start with nothing and you're actually building yourself up. So you don't start with certain fears that somebody who comes from corporates comes up with. What if it fails? I have to be honest, the thought now and again comes to my mind when tough days come, when I go like, I can always go back and get my job, right? But then I also have to remember the reason why I actually left corporate to actually do this and get rid of plan B. So I think when you're starting from not coming from corporate, your plan B, you don't have a plan B. Your plan B is plan A, which is what you're actually working on. So I actually see that as an advantage over starting from corporate. However, all I can say is you need to look within yourself and ask yourself that if I don't do it now, when would I ever do it? One of the challenges that I've had was I could have left corporate a long time ago, but I had fears, and that fear is actually a killer because a lot of people are sitting in corporate where they can actually be building businesses and actually, creating jobs in the country. But then because of the fear of what if it goes wrong, that's actually what really stops people in their paths. I had to adapt a mentality of what if it goes right. That's the first mentality I had to adapt. The second mentality was my plan A and my plan B are the same thing. They are all plan A. I don't have a plan B. So I have to make plan A work. And this is basically the only plan that I have. And that for me has actually got me to actually stay in the space that I'm in for the time that I've been. Another thing as well that I had to put into place was what could go wrong, right? What could go wrong? And the I needed to look back into my fears and ask myself, what's the worst thing that could happen? The worst thing that could happen is that I could die. That's the only worst thing that could happen. Anything else for me, I couldn't see it as any worse. You fall, you'll bounce back. That's basically part of the story. So if I can't die from this, then I can't really think of what's the worst thing that could happen in my space right now. And yes, so that's
No,
how I did it.
yeah, that's a very interesting one because I remember chatting to the other gentleman. He was dealing with the data migration for that bank, which was our client. So he managed to pursue within his skill set because we were telling them that, guys, you are already retrenched. There's no turning back. This is a financial sector. The chances of you being reabsorbed in the industry, they are very slim because there's a jobs bloodbath everywhere. So you have no choice. You just need to take a leap of faith and start your own business. And then the gentleman took a leap of faith. I think in no time, he secured a contract with a financial sector company that was already doing their data migration data to another data center somewhere. So, and then that contract, I think, was paying him 5 times more than what he was earning in his salary, just after maybe about 2 months of being unemployed. So, and these are, I think, some of the things that you are just referring to. So just tell us more about what does your company do? What is the solution that you provide? And what is this problem that you are actually solving? Tell us more about the services in your business that you render.
Okay. All right. So the concentration of our business is in the cloud space, right? So what we do is that we help businesses transition and transform their services or their applications and services into cloud. A reason being, what we've realized is that over time, companies have been investing a lot in their own infrastructure. But cloud has actually made servers, data centers actually obsolete and also cheaper as well. So we actually help businesses transform and move their services onto the cloud. So what we offer is that we offer migration services, whether it's actually data or servers themselves. We offer architectural redesign. So we actually help the businesses transform their applications and their softwares to be cloud ready. And the reason being, you can take advantage of the cloud, right? We help our businesses build strategy to move onto the cloud. Now, COVID has been one of this, one of the One of the things that actually has made it very clear that companies need to consider cloud as part of their strategy. So we actually help companies actually do that migration, build for the cloud, move their services onto the cloud, because if we get another lockdown, businesses do not have the luxuries of getting their engineers to actually go and sit in the data center. The country's on lockdown, right? But if you are on the cloud, you allow, anybody to actually literally work from anywhere and be able to administrate your environment and provide services without needing them to be physically there. That's the one part. The other part as well is that you can literally hire anybody from all over the world and actually have them deliver into your business plan without having them sitting in the country of residency. So that's another thing. The ability to scale as well. We know that we've got issues with electricity in the country. Now imagine having let's take a banking solution as an example. Imagine having your banking solution go down because South Africa, Eskom has decided to cut down electricity for the next 2 days, right? That's going to be a disaster. I mean, we don't want to know that our money is inaccessible when we actually need it. So now being on the cloud, those do not become problems because you can actually literally have your data center sitting in multiple parts of the world, and then you are able to deliver services as you need them. I don't think any of us have really ever thought of Google being down or Facebook, or I'm sure that we've had cases where it's been down, but we cannot really think of ourselves working effectively without some of these services. And those service providers have thought of building some of this infrastructure, and they've actually democratized these services and infrastructure. So our services are there to actually help companies transition and move on to the cloud. And there's a lot of skills gap in that space, and that's what we're actually taking advantage of with our experience.
Yeah. So what is really 4IR all about, and what is it bringing, and where are the opportunities, especially for small businesses? So you have been able to see the opportunity because you've been exposed in the environment, and things like cloud computing. I mean, those are just very complicated, very technical, things to deal with, because you really need to be skilled in those areas and have some exposure. So what is 4IR bringing, and how can ordinary people take advantage of some of the opportunities that have been brought by the 4IR, and where are the opportunities, especially for small businesses, to play? Or is it only for people like you and big companies that are out there that can commercially derive value, or any ordinary person can really extract value out of what 4IR can bring?
Okay. All right. I think, first of all, I think we live in very interesting times. This is probably the best time in history for us to be alive. I don't think we'll really be seeing a lot of this within our lifetimes. So for IR, basically it's an industrial revolution, or what it's deemed as Industry 4.0. We come from the third industrial revolution that included the information age, the industrial age as we know it, and then as well as the the electrical age, the computing age. But now we're in an age of intelligence, right? The age of intelligence, where we've got the likes of your artificial intelligence coming in and literally taking over what we do on a daily basis. We've got the likes of there's a lot of services. I'll actually get into what are some of the aspects that actually constitute 4IR. So we come from an age where connectivity was we were actually just getting into connectivity and computing. Now that we've got all this computing and connectivity, now we've got information, and then this information needs to make sense, right? So in the 4IR space, there's multiple things that you look at. There is cloud computing, which basically means computing at scale, and computing where there there is no need for you to actually be owning the services or the computing hardware you actually need to do that. We've got artificial intelligence, which is the machine learning part of things, where computers are actually becoming smarter, and software is actually our computers are able to think, right? We've got data and business data analytics, where we've got so much data that we've been collecting over the past 20 years that has never been collected in the history of the world, and we need to be making sense of that. We've got your virtual reality or mixed reality. So this is literally creating immersion into the services that we actually provide, where the user will actually be able to step into a reality that you actually have envisioned for them, right? And we've got biotechnology as well, which goes more into your biomedical space, where there's also something that's rather interesting that I've been following, where there's a connection between machine and human beings. Basically, I don't know if you guys have heard of Neuralink, that Elon, which is one of Elon Musk's companies that actually connects a human being's brain or a biological entity onto a computer and be able to read brain waves and actually compute that. So the interesting thing about the 4IR is that, for one, it's actually a very as much as the technology has been out there for a few years, it's still a very young space. So a lot of people are trying to wrap their heads around it. But the lovely thing about the times that we're in is that anybody can learn anything right now, right? Access to information is actually very available, and in the tech space, technology has actually become democratized. That means anyone can literally, from even high school, can actually, if they can spend time, they can actually start contributing in the 4IR space. So there's personally, there's a few technologies that I'm actually looking at that I find I see a lot of use cases for them. And one of them is actually blockchain, right? I know whenever you hear blockchain, a lot of people think Bitcoin. Bitcoin is just one use case, and I think it's been it has been it's been messed around in the past few years over scams that are being around. But Bitcoin is actually just one of the use case that actually just demonstrate the ability to actually have digital currency. But Bitcoin itself, it's a system of trust, or trustless trust systems. That's basically what it is, where you actually are building system that does not require human beings to actually form trust or create trust. There's a lot of use cases out of that space. One of the use cases that comes to mind is the ability for transparency in the government space, transparency in the medical space. Imagine, I'll give you an example. Imagine you coming from, let's say, Eastern Cape. You actually went to a specific doctor, and then you were diagnosed with a certain, or you were treated for a certain um, ailment, whatever that is. And then you happen to be in Joburg, and something happens to you where you cannot even be able to give your history. But we are able to go and look at your record that we can actually trust, your medical record that we can actually trust with your consent, right? To actually be able to see your history, to be able to help you treat you. There is, in the medical space, there's people who've been treated wrongfully over certain things that they were not diagnosed with, because there's no history of the record keeping, right? So now blockchain could actually be able to help with that. It even gets exciting. Smart cities, when we look at smart cities, imagine the ability for you to actually have a let's say you've got a property in Pietermaritzburg. That property has blockchain as part of it's within the blockchain space, where anybody can actually book your property, get into your property, and actually pay using a blockchain technology without you being there. Your property can actually take care of itself, because it knows it has what they call smart contracts, which can actually basically deal with the opening of the locks and the closing of the locks based on the agreement that's actually within the technology itself. So now to answer your question about opportunities, there's a lot of opportunities, and I just picked on blockchain as one of them. In the cloud computing space, for one, there's a lot of shortage of skills, whether it's consulting skills or actually building solutions in the consulting skills. I mean, in the cloud computing space. There's a lot of shortage around the world, not just in South Africa. We actually are fortunate to be hosting some of the three big cloud computing service providers out there. Amazon has now launched in South Africa officially. Microsoft has launched their cloud offering in the country as well. They've got data centers here in the country as well. And we've got your likes of your Huawei and your Google Cloud service providers who are actually offering those. Now, with the likes of Amazon, the African data centers are actually sitting in Cape Town and other areas. That means the whole continent is actually being serviced in this bottom part of the continent. Now, there's a lot of corporates actually moving into that space, and the demand is so high that we are unable to sometimes even meet some of the requirements from actually offering those services. Advantage of that is that you might not necessarily be in the consulting space per se, but now you are able to actually harness the services of literally hiring different people sitting all over the world to actually offer, build teams to actually service your clients. That can actually happen in this day and age, something that couldn't be done in the past few years, especially post pre-COVID, if we look at it. There's augmented, there's a virtual reality space. There's marketing companies. Imagine the ability for you to actually be able to be in the comfort of your home, but be able to go and actually navigate or see certain products that you actually want to be able to get in touch with, but sitting at the comfort of your home. By the time you actually decide to actually go and actually see those properties, whether it's property, whether it's products, you have already made decisions about what you actually want out of them. So that is actually the reality that we're moving into. And I think there's a lot of use cases in there. As long as one is actually able to say, let me go and find out what's there and let me go and research. All the information that you need is out there. I think the one thing that we actually have is time. And that's literally the one thing that could actually be at your advantage if you are willing to actually look at the world in those eyes. I can go on and on and on because that's one thing that I'm very passionate about, but there's a lot of use cases. And I think the space is actually very open and young, and the barrier to entry is very, very small. It's very, very small. Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's just so much to talk about, and I know we can really go on and on because there's really rich information out there that that we want to share with our people. So, but I hear all of that, but what is really stifling? We know that there's innovation out there, and the world is moving at a very fast pace. But what is really stifling innovation, especially in South Africa, as opposed to the rest of the world? I mean, you have had a global exposure. You worked overseas. You worked in China. You worked in the US. So, what do you think people like the Chinese, they are doing right that we are not, and why is our pace seeming to be playing catch up all the time with the rest of the world, and we aren't as innovative at the level where to the level where the world is? So we are almost like only the consumers of innovation, but we don't initiate innovation ourselves. So what is really stifling us, especially locally here in South Africa, such that we are able to also have all these big technology companies that are bringing the innovation to the world? So what is really stifling us in terms of us being competitive to the rest of the world?
All right. So I think for one, something that I've personally noticed is we hoping someone will solve our problems. And for me, that's actually the biggest thing, because you'll always be looking out for your solutions as opposed to actually solving things yourself. I had an opportunity to live in China for a few months. And then what I've noticed is that how the Chinese think is that they actually start looking internal before they look outside, right? They look at how can we actually solve this problem ourselves before they look at somebody else's solution. That way they actually form, they create they create their own path basically. So with us, what I think, and I don't know if it's just our mentality, how we think of things, is the fact that we actually expecting somebody else to come and actually solve our problems. Facebook was we're supposed to have our own version of Facebook, or even a better version of Facebook coming from the continent, right? But we would actually be comfortable consuming somebody else's, for one, because I think we believe that we're not good enough. So I think there's a mentality problem that we actually need to start addressing as you know, as a continent, not even as a country, but as a continent, number one. Number two, I think we are afraid to fail, right? And I think it's because failure hasn't been embraced as a way to learn. It has been looked at as a wrong thing. I think if we can get over the idea of failing being a bad thing, we could actually be able to try these things. Because if you you go and chat to some of the high school students, you realize that they've got very, very interesting ideas. They, you know, some of those guys are quite smart. You actually be wondering you know, why aren't they trying things out? But I don't think we are setting up the right platform to allow them to actually innovate. And then they come into corporate as an example. Once they get into corporate, we actually fit them in square boxes. And the problem with fitting people into square boxes is that they could either fit or they will actually leave. Some of them don't even fit, but then they actually start that creativity and ideas starts dying. One of the reasons why I moved around from company to company is that I wanted to build a career, yes, right? But I had ideas that I would not fit in. Sometimes you get into a company and it looks like, you know, they will actually allow you to grow and, you know, come up with this innovative ways. But the moment you get there, you realize that they actually want you to do things in a specific way, and they don't want to listen to you because they don't feel that you've got the right experience. So that actually then ends up killing innovation. So you want to kill somebody's innovation, put them in a position where they don't belong, and then force them to do things in that specific way. So I think a reason why this continent in general and South Africa is because we don't allow people to fail or to try out things, number one. Number two, we don't, I think one of the things that we need to do is to start supporting people in the initiative and be honest as well. If something is good, it's good. If something is not good, it's not good, but give constructive criticism, because the fact that somebody has gone a mile away to try this thing, it's not easy. Anybody can do it sitting at the comfort of their home, and they can do it better. I'm a better coach. I'm a better coach than a Chiefs coach, but I'm better coach because I'm sitting on my couch. But the moment I have to stand up and actually do it, I will actually realize that there's so much work to be done there that you know, it's nice to talk. So I think the thing about it is that we need to be comfortable in, you know, in allowing people to be themselves and actually trying them without really fitting people in. And that's one of the biggest killers. I mean, we can blame government. I would love to blame government as well, because there's the Chinese government supports its entrepreneurs, right? But I cannot start there. I need to say we had 10 entrepreneurs that came through and the government only supported one or did not support them, versus the government is not supporting us, but we're not standing up to do something about it. So I think it's also our initiative as well. I'm a person who likes looking at myself first and then going out and actually say, I've done this, therefore I need your help on this. Meet me halfway, right? And so, if just to answer your question, I think there's a lot that we need to do. It's okay to fail. That's the one thing I can say. It's okay to fail. Go and do it. A person who has done it is better than a person who thinks about doing it. And some of the stuff you might look at and say they are not good enough. They're not good enough. If you can do them better, go do them better. It's nothing wrong with that. And you know, let's solve our problems. Let's stop looking for a savior outside or outside from the US to give us these things, right? China started very interesting. Now that we're talking, just using China as an example, China started as a copycat. But what they did with that copycat mentality is that they started learning how to create, right? Eventually, they got to a point where they know how anybody really is able to replicate certain things, then they could actually remix it, right? Innovation, if you think about it, generally comes from a combination of different things to form this one specific thing that's failing you, right? So that's where it comes from. China started as a copycat. If we have to learn to copycat, maybe we need to start there. Let's start learning how to copycat because it gives us the attitude of building and creating. And then from there on, we start actually doing and solving our own problems. But I think it actually comes down to that. We need to start solving African problems. It cannot be solved by somebody else outside. They will not solve it the way you want it. They will do it the way that they want, and they will determine the rules as well.
That sounds good. Sounds really good. So now, in terms of the scalability, because there are a number of tech companies here locally, and maybe just let me just address something for the Instagram people. So I know that there's a little bit of echo or some background noise on the Instagram. So if you have a problem, maybe you can just join us on Zoom. So we have a Zoom link there, so you can try maybe Zoom. I think on Zoom we are clear. So I think there's just a little bit of a sound issue with the Instagram people. Forgive us for that, but we will put the recording on my channel. There's a YouTube channel, Rapelang Mutsumi. So we'll put this recording there. I think we'll use the Zoom recording because it will come out much more clear. So forgive us for that. So in terms of scalability, Mr. Sebetseba, I know that we have a lot of tech companies and everyone wants to start a tech company, tech startups. So, but there is a big problem of scalability. And all these small businesses are small, and their go-to market strategy is very poor, such that they're not able to build sustainable tech companies that are scalable and that can really grow. So for you, what has been the strategy of your company as a startup? I know your background, expertise, experience, that corporate background plays a major role as a lever, so you leverage from that. But how can ordinary startups have a strategy that works to scale their business, for their business to become bigger and much more successful? And I'm saying this because we run a lot of tech startup accelerator programs, so to accelerate small business growth. So, but I know that there are a lot of challenges around scalability and sustainability of tech companies. So you can have a client today doing certain solutions and things change overnight, technology change overnight, and there are other new solutions that comes up. The client leave you, quickly go to a better solution. So there is agility, and there are products and solutions that are coming and new, and is a very competitive space. So how are you doing it as a company, and how do you think you will scale, and where do you see yourself in 5 years within all these trends and within all this competition?
Okay, all right. So one of the things that we're actually leveraging is actually our network. I think something that's rather interesting is, or something that we actually need to learn as small businesses or startups, it's to actually use your network. There's a lot of things that you can actually achieve by actually working with other businesses. The ability to take over the market, you realize that we're actually competing against big corporates or big businesses that have been in the space for a few years, where when you get in, you're too small to be actually be considered. But if 2 or 3 companies gang together to actually go and actually deliver a specific solution to a client, they the 3 or 4 companies coming together, they are big enough to actually be considered as a big business or as a business that could actually be able to compete. So we need to start leveraging each other's strength and actually, teaming up to actually do these things. I always say to some of the people that actually come across with is that economics, it's actually a group sport. You cannot play it alone. You need to learn to play with other people and use the strategic partnerships to actually achieve what you want to achieve, right? The 5 of us can do better than I can do on my own, right? We can better win a deal together than I could do it on my own. The idea is not for me to get there ahead of you and be the best guy in the space, but it's actually for us to actually grow together and actually take over the market and change it the way that we want to change it. So in our business, we actually take advantage of our partnerships, and we actually partner with quite a few businesses to actually target some of these clients that actually want to go into, and actually use each other's services to actually build each other up. In our networks, I mean, we've worked with over 10 companies that we actually gone with to actually get some of the clients that we actually have, and we're able to deliver with that, because in a situation where a client requires 20 people, as an example, to actually go and deliver a certain solution, I might have 3, but my partners actually could actually be able to bring 17, and together we are able to go and become a force to reckon with, because we are able to push the mess, and we're actually able to push and deliver what the client requires. So now the thing is, we in my company, we actually as much as we are about 2.5, 3 years old, we're actually starting to actually look outside of the country as well. We're already in communication with other companies outside of the country, in other countries, neighboring countries, and we're actually competing in those spaces as well, because we know that we don't necessarily have to go there on our own. There's somebody who already has space and footprint or access to that market that we can actually partner with. So partnership is very important. That's the one thing that I would always encourage anybody to look at. Look at companies that have the same vision as you. Look at the companies that are in the same space as you. The size of the pie is so big that nobody would actually finish it by themselves. And you'll realize that you will need to partner with some companies to actually be able to be competitive in the space as well. The 2 of us might actually be stronger in cloud computing. We might not be strong in AI. We might come across an offering that requires the 2. We might know a company that's good at AI, but does not have access to that client space. We should be able to bring them in and actually open that opportunity for them, because the moment they are in, they are able to open the cloud computing space, and I'm able to open the AI space for them as well. So the idea is working together. Like, as I say, economy is a group sport. You could be the best soccer player in the world, but you can go and play with the team that's on the lowest team, but if you're playing alone, you will never really win, right? Because they actually know how to leverage the team mentality or the group mentality of actually working together and actually relieving each other or providing opportunities for each other. And I think small businesses need to consider that. It's very important. Scalability, you can only scale when you're actually working with other people as you're building.
So I hear the collaboration part, which they say collaboration is a new innovation. So, but are you saying that now small business don't have to only, through technology, don't only have to look at their immediate market, which is the local market. The market, because of technology, is global. And you Absolutely. Can expand your business very easy into various parts of the world. And your cloud services can be able to be to sell that solution elsewhere outside of South Africa and service the clients that are outside South Africa and work on projects that are global, not necessarily focusing on the South African market. And I think this also goes to any other business, whether you are a service business or a product business, that through technology, there's e-commerce today, you can reach any customer in the world, and technology allows you to do that. So is it the same thing that you are explaining now, that technology allows us now to no longer be restricted to our local market, but to expand our solutions, expand our services to the rest of the world, because there is no distance. It's just a matter of facilitating the logistics of how those solutions get to the clients outside of your country. So what is the strategy of reaching the market all over the world, scale your business and expand your business to the rest of the world? And how have you tried to do that yourself?
Okay. All right. So we've partnered with quite a few companies outside of the continent, right? And within the continent as well. And most of these conversations actually started with reaching out, right? A good research of the company that you actually want to partner with, and the market that you actually want to actually get into as well. So that how we actually went about it on our side is that we looked at, in our strategy, we looked at markets that we actually want to start expanding into. And then from there on, we started looking at who are the players in those spaces, whether small or big, and what are they actually looking at as well. And because of that, it became easier, because what we did was start to reach out, have networks, start talking to other businesses out there, start talking to to those business owners, and understanding what's actually in that space in their markets as well. We've got platforms like your LinkedIn. That is actually one of the best tools that you could actually ever use in your business, because everybody who's actually in the space is in there, and they actually have their portfolio out there as well. So what we did is that we started reaching out to these businesses and looking at what they are offering, and actually are proposing what we actually offer as well. And what we did as well is that we provided a win-win solution as well, where we're saying, we are in this market, we can actually open a footprint for you into this market. However, we also need you to open a footprint for us in that market as well. So this way, I don't need to go and sit in Malaysia to go and do work in Malaysia. We actually have a partner in Malaysia where we're actually starting to pick up projects that we're actually working on. I've never been to Malaysia. I'd like to go someday though. So, but the fact that we are actually doing work in that space, it actually tells you that the borders have no limitation. The people that we actually have working on those projects, some of them are sitting in Lesotho, some of them are in South Africa as well. We've got some that are sitting in Zim. All of them are global teams that we actually have that are actually helping us deliver work for our client that's sitting in Malaysia. So technology has actually opened that up, where we can literally have teams sitting all over the world, delivering to a client that's sitting in a completely different geographical area, to actually provide service for them. So technology has definitely opened this. And I have to be honest, COVID, yes, it came with a lot of negativity, but it's also coming up with some of the most innovative ways where we were forced to actually think outside of the box. Before, you would need somebody to be sitting in your office to provide a service. Now the person can be sitting on a beach somewhere in Durban, and actually working to deliver a service for somebody sitting in a completely different country without expecting them to physically be there. So technology has actually really opened this up. So I would actually encourage people to look at, to never look at the South African borders and, being in South Africa as the only way to actually build your business. Partnerships, look at the rest of the world. There's somebody out there who needs the service that you're providing. You might actually not have a very good market in the country, but you might actually realize that there is a place where your market will actually thrive, or your service offering will actually thrive, because there's somebody where you actually think there's already somebody doing it here, somebody is not doing it in there. I'll give you an example. If you look at some of our neighboring countries, in terms of infrastructure and setting offerings, they are not necessarily where we are. Not all of them, but they are not necessarily where we are. So a lot of things, we assume that they already exist because they exist here. But you'd actually be surprised that some of the things that you actually take for granted here, or services that you will not necessarily see value in, you can actually provide value in those markets, because those markets are not yet where we are in some of these things. In some of the markets, they're actually quite ahead of us as well. So then you learn in that market and say, which partner can we use in those markets to come and actually give value here, because they bring in a different perspective, as an example.
All right, no, thank you so much, Mr. Sebetseba. I don't want to prolong this conversation as we just close it. So where can people find you if they want to connect with you, if maybe they need your solutions, they need your services? So where can people find you, just so that they can reach out for some of the solutions that you provide? Some of them might maybe need your advice and need to touch base for one thing or another. So how can people find you, and where can they easily find you?
Okay. All right. So I could easily be reachable on LinkedIn. That's one good networking platform that I use. So look for Edmond Sebetseba on LinkedIn, and email address it's edmond@alphainnovate.io. And also check our website, alphainnovate.io. We are there as well. And I'm also on Instagram, I guess. Also ping me on Instagram as well. But yes, so that's will be found in those different platforms as well.
Wow, no, fantastic. And I know that I had to force you to be on Instagram. You didn't want. So finally, you got to concede. So thank you very much, guys, for joining us. And that was the conversation about the 4IR, looking into Mr. Sebetseba's journey and the transition from corporate into entrepreneurship. And I think he relayed his story very well. And some of you are in corporate, you are looking into transitioning into entrepreneurship. And I think he has given his side of the story, has given some nuggets of wisdom about how to go about it. And I think, yeah, if you want to maybe catch up more about this conversation, you can go to my YouTube channel where this conversation will be loaded, so that you can be able to follow it there. And you can follow also more other upcoming sessions that we're going to have. TechTalk with Rapelang, we are here, and these TechTalks will be continuing to inspire and educate and inform our nation, especially on issues of technology, issues of 4IR, and just relating the information out there to our community. So thank you very much, Mr. Sebetseba, and thank you so much, guys, for joining us. We can see some of the people that have joined us, Harmony Mutibi, Drikas with Israel, to Lehonolo Motswening, Tatuma for Temba Chauke. Those are some of the guys in Zoom. And then we still have more other people on Instagram. We have Olanan Globu, we have Matlapa, we have Tabo Motswatswe, we have Sitazo, we have Raida Masiho, so we have Mona Linda, Harmony, Mbele, Tsapiso Malema, Kondwani group is here as well, Tammy Thomas. So a couple of guys that have joined us in this conversation. Thank you very much, guys. And until we see you again in our next conversation, Tech Talk with Rapelang. So look out for more conversations still upcoming and more episodes still coming. So thank you very much. See you next time.
Thank you, everyone, and thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.